What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Smash JT. I was really excited about the new PlayStation 5 Slim with the optional separate disk drive that you could purchase aftermarket, and if it broke, you could buy another one. And I'm like, you know what? I think Sony did something right for once. And every time I feel like Sony does something right, they do something wrong to negate it. The PlayStation 5 optional disk drive requires an internet connection to pair, meaning that if you were to buy this, you have to connect to the internet for it to work. And while on the surface, this may not seem like a huge deal to a lot of people out there because most of us have an internet connection, it's how you're watching this video, more concerning is what this means for the future of game preservation. Hit that subscribe button, give me a like, and check out smashjt.com for the full story of what's transpiring here. And big thanks to Video Games Chronicle for catching this on Twitter. But some people have seen a Modern Warfare bundle in the wild with this tiny little detail stretched underneath it. What's that say? Oh, the PlayStation 5 Slim disk drive requires an internet connection for initial setup. Because of course it does. Why wouldn't it? It's a physical product plugging into a physical product. Why wouldn't it need an internet connection to check to make sure that it's a Sony product? Of course it does. That was sarcasm. In a move that has perplexed and concerned some in the gaming community, Sony's upcoming optional disk drive for the PlayStation 5 Slim will mandate an internet connection for its initial pairing with the console. It was spotted in the fine print on the back of a box in the upcoming Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 PS5 Slim bundle that Sony didn't even announce. And this thing just kind of ended up on some random store shelves. And it was a pretty cool sight to see. Like, oh, cool. The Slim is coming out and there's going to be a bundle with it. We didn't even know about this. And, oh, wait, an internet connection is required. Now, there's going to be a few people that hear this and say, why? Why is this necessary for a physical product connecting to a physical product, needing an internet connection to make sure that it works when they can just connect to each other? To which I say, this is clearly Sony putting something in place as a security measure to ensure legitimacy of the disk drive. Something that they don't want third-party companies coming in with their own Blu-ray player attachments to undercut them. Let's first and foremost, that's the real concern, to undercut them. But Sony would also blame it on, oh, we don't want a third-party Blu-ray player to ruin your system, so we need to protect against that. That's going to be their PR statement for getting around we want to be able to charge whatever the hell we want for this Blu-ray player and have no competition for it. Imagine buying a PC from, I don't know, Dell, and trying to add a disk drive to that. And Dell was saying, yeah, you can, but it has to be a Dell disk drive. You can't just go off-brand and buy your own disk drive for your PC. That's what Sony is doing here with their PlayStation 5. This is some Apple-level debauchery. They want to be able to control the entire market space that they are in for the PlayStation 5. And while I can try to see where Sony is coming from and the greedy side of business with this and ensuring that they can have control of pricing power with everything that connects to the PlayStation 5 within their control, this raises some serious questions down the road for game preservation. One of the reasons I was so excited about this was I was talking in my video about how my Xbox broke. The disk drive doesn't work on it anymore. And that system's 20 plus years old, and you can't just buy a disk drive for an Xbox and replace it. Well, maybe you can, but it's pretty intricate. You got to take the whole thing apart, put a new one. I'm not getting that deep into it. So to have plug and play disk drives in the new console was exciting for longevity purposes. But if in the same breath you're required to have an internet connection for these to work, it means it needs to connect to Sony's network, and 20, 25, 30 years down the road, there's no guarantee that that section, that portion of Sony's network, or Sony in general, will even be around to support it. And as Video Game Chronicles mentioned in their article, the issue extends to how Sony and Microsoft have been implementing anti-piracy measures, aligning with Section 1201 of the DMCA, which renders it illegal to bypass technology measures that control access to copyrighted works. So Sony, in this case, is clearly putting a preventative measure in so that they can control who has access to the inner workings of the PS5. While this approach may address certain security concerns in the modern era, it also treads murky waters concerning the preservations of the games in gaming hardware. It's a horrible trade-off that has long-term implications for collectors, enthusiasts, and even the average gamers who may not always have reliable internet access. And I'm trying really hard not to blow this out of proportion because at the end of the day, it's just a minor internet check to make sure that it's a PlayStation branded disk drive plugging into the PlayStation 5. And I understand it's a quick sync, understanding, okay, it connects, it's our brand thing, it works. But there's a greater issue at play here that I don't think a lot of people are really talking about, and one that makes me want to go into PC gaming even more. Console manufacturers are trying so hard to keep you in their own ecosystem that they're actually hurting themselves in the long run, forcing gamers to connect to the internet, buy specific items, making sure that the store or the system or the network is still running decades from now. That's what I'm talking about. That's what the concern is, and that's what people should be worried about. There is ultimately no real need for an internet check for a disk drive that plugs into a console. And I'm not going to let Sony or anyone else in their marketing department tell me otherwise. It's a slap in the face to game preservation and collectors everywhere. And once again, it's the ghost of Jim Ryan, who is still somehow employed at Sony for the next few months before he gets ushered out of there. And this whole 2 steps forward, 2 steps back approach with everything when it comes to business with them. They can't be pro-consumer on any front. And again, I don't want to hear, oh, it's to protect your Sony PlayStation 5. What about the freedom of choice for the consumer, making it so they can purchase what they want at the price that's reasonable for them and can research online if something is good or not, instead of just going by, oh, it's Sony's disk drive, have to buy that no matter what Sony charges, and it has to be Sony because it has the internet connection requirement to make sure that it's authentic and make sure that it works with the PlayStation 5, which is complete BS. At least that's how I feel about this situation. I'm frustrated by it because this is completely absurd, unnecessary, not required, and Sony is implementing it as a way to force people to purchase their brand of a product. And even if there weren't third-party products coming onto the market for it, this is just another hurdle, another hiccup, another problem that could go wrong with your PlayStation 5 Slim when you buy it, trying to connect something and having an error with your internet, having an error with the systems trying to work this thing, having them not download something properly in an update. Now, what could transpire, and I'm hoping for this down the road long time from now, is Sony implements an update to their firmware that doesn't require a internet check 2 decades from now, so that people that want to play this thing, if they have the latest firmware running on their PlayStation 5, down the road, they don't need to check on the internet. Back when Sony won't be making any money off these 2 decades from now, they're not going to be producing them anymore, where it will rely heavily on third parties to make them because you won't be able to get them from Sony anyways. And if there's anything I've learned from the hacker community in general, even with these precautions that Sony's putting in place, they're going to get around them anyways, so it's not really the biggest deal in the world. It's just another headache for consumers to deal with. And I think that ultimately is my frustration with all of this. That and Sony taking the 2-step back greed approach with everything they seemingly do these days. It's very frustrating. But yeah, that's the story on the PS5 optional disk drive requiring an internet connection to be able to connect, even though it's a physical product connecting physically. Technology. Don't you love it? I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, you stay smashing. Smash.